Jesus of Nazareth taught anyone who would listen about how to discover the realm of God right here on earth, in their ordinary lives. He liked to teach in parables, possibly because of the paradoxical nature of proclaiming that God's realm can be found on earth as it is in heaven. Human life on earth can be difficult and cruel and hateful. Hi, Sadie. How are we supposed to find God's realm amidst darkness and chaos that we experience so regularly? At our most recent Bible study, our own Sybil Becker, reminded us that we are Easter people living in a Good Friday world. Jesus described how to sift through our world, our ordinary world, to discover God's realm, or God's kingdom, God's household, God's beloved community. Pick your metaphor. Jesus said it's like a shepherd who has 99 sheep and he leaves all of them to go in search of the one who is lost. It's like a hateful son who comes to his senses and his father throws a feast in his honor. It's like a vineyard where all the workers who showed up at the end of the day get paid the exact same wage as those who showed up at the beginning of the day. Jesus said the kingdom is like a seed that has to be planted in just the right soil. If you plant it over there, the birds eat it and it burns up, it never takes root. It's on the rocks, it can't grow. If you plant it over there, it winds up growing amidst thorns and it gets strangled before it can ever grow into anything beautiful. But if you plant it in the right soil, in the deep soil, where it can take root and it can grow fully, it will produce grain, produce good fruit in abundance. How often do we think about our spiritual lives producing fruit? Probably not often enough. Now, there are plenty of people in this church who are much better, much more experienced gardeners than myself. But even I know some very basic lessons about what you have to do to get your garden to produce good fruit. You have to pick really good quality soil, and you have to make sure it has enough room to grow. Good quality soil where the seed can take root and get all the nutrients it needs, and where it has enough space to grow to maturity. So when Emily and I moved here 4 years ago, one of the first things we did was we started 2 box gardens in our backyard. Here's one of them here. We planted that first year, we planted carrots, and we were so excited about our carrots. We love carrots. We planted carrots in this garden, and we watered them, and we waited the whole season for them to grow. And when we finally came over to pluck the carrots out of the soil, they were about that big. We had about 5 of them, all about that big. Couldn't even make one little salad out of them. It was really depressing, actually. But later on we learned that it's because of the kind of soil we used. We were not using the soil that you need to use in order to get good quality big carrots. We also didn't give them enough space to grow. We planted them too close together, and we never removed some of them to give the carrots more room to grow. We did it wrong. Well, but in this other box garden, we planted herbs. We planted some herb plants, and well, apparently we did a good job with those. What you're looking at is mint. If any of you need mint for anything ever, come on over. We have plenty to spare. This is our mint plant. It grows like this every year in abundance. It comes back bigger and bigger every single year because it's the right kind of plant that was planted in the right kind of soil, and it was given this entire box garden to grow in. what's true for a plant garden, for an herb garden, is also true for our souls. God has already planted the seed of faith in each of us. All that is required of us is to prepare an appropriate space for that seed to take root and produce good fruit in our lives. Now, before we just really spoil this metaphor entirely, we need to remember that the word fruit, the word that we get for fruit, comes directly from a Latin word meaning delight. The entire point of the spiritual journey is to share in the abundant delight God is growing in our ordinary lives every single day. But it's up to us to prepare a space for it. It's our job to set aside enough room for God's abundant delight to grow in our lives. We have to trust that God knows what God is doing, that we are the deep soil. We're good enough. We are exactly the people that God needs. It's really just our job to make space, to make room, so that this fruit can grow in our lives, so that we might be delighted as God is delighted. It's no simple task. We're living in an era of fear and scarcity, an era of division and turmoil, with one crisis that leads to another. For years, I would fail to keep in touch with friends and family. I would fail to take the time for the people and the activities that bring delight to my life. Even during a worldwide pandemic in which my schedule has opened up considerably and my rhythm of life has slowed down, even during this time, I still say all the time, I'm just too busy. I'm too busy. I'm too busy to call that person back. I'm too busy to sit down and write a thank you note. I'm too busy to keep up with all these delightful people and delightful things in my life. I'm just too busy. Even now, I say this. We like being busy. Being busy makes us sound important. It signifies that we serve a purpose and our time is in high demand. You know what I've realized is closer to the truth, though? I haven't been too busy for my friends and my family. I haven't been too busy for delight. I've been too boxed in. I've been too small and restrictive and stingy in my thinking. I've been living too confined to grow to fruition the delights that God is bringing to my life. Or I've been too overwhelmed, too caught up in the thorns and thistles of the world, allowing suffering and sadness to strangle the life out of these good fruits before they even have a chance to grow. God has planted so many good seeds in my life. And if I am not careful, if I do not take the time to give them the space they need to flourish and grow, I miss out on the delight. And I have no one to blame but myself. If we want to grow in delight of God's creation, we have to be willing to feel deeply, to reflect, to let the seed of God's love establish deep roots in our hearts and our lives. And we need to be able to set aside some space, some amount of time daily, to clear away the pain and the suffering, to resist and reject the thorns and the weeds of this world, and make space for God's delights to grow among us. What might that look like for us? Listen, There was a man who worked relentlessly to provide for his family. And the more time he spent providing for them financially, the less he took delight in them, and the less they could delight in him. Listen, there was a family with a delightful child, always giggly and lots of fun. And the child grew older, and the family started focusing more on making sure that that child got the best grades and participated in the best activities so they could get in the best schools and have the best career and the best life possible. And as that child grew older and as those expectations mounted, as they piled on top of one another, the less the parents and the child took delight in their life together. Listen, there was a woman who only ever wanted one thing from her life. Motorcycles going by. Listen, there was a woman who only ever wanted one thing from her life. She wanted her life to have purpose and worth. So throughout her entire adulthood, she took on countless social justice efforts and tirelessly volunteered for good causes and supported good works every single day that she could. And one day, when she was about to turn 80 years old and still in very good health, she suddenly realized that none of the good works she had done had ever delighted her. And she wondered if her life had any purpose or any worth. Let anyone with ears listen. God takes delight in what is growing in your ordinary life right now, this moment, today. God is growing something delightful. Let delight grow within you. Delight in what is growing all around you. Let it grow.